What have you broken in the past? Breakage isn't always bad. In fact, breaking things, including yourself, is completely okay when the experience leads to something better. This is How I Broke That.
It's time to dive into Delbert McClinton's rise to fame. In episode 2 of 3, we'll hear about Delbert's experience touring with big names, Bruce Channel and the Beatles. From teaching John Lennon harmonica tricks to enjoying a night on the town with the entire Beatles crew. This man has lived a life most of us can only dream of, and it's filled with breakage in a good way.
Welcome to How I Broke That.
Everybody knows your voice, okay? But let's talk about maybe one of you tell me if this was your breakthrough moment, but playing harmonica. Take us to Hey Baby and how that all came. And of course, I have to ask the obligatory question, and I hope you are willing to indulge me and everybody, including my mom and my aunts and uncles, in the Beatles. And how the Beatles flow into the harmonica story. So can you take us to Hey Baby and the harmonica and how your voice potentially wasn't even the real reason that people began to notice you?
Well, in that time, let's see, that came out in, what year did Hey Baby? 61. Came out in 61. Well, in 1961, everybody in the world wasn't in a band, but I was, and I had the best band in town, for whatever that's worth. It's the tallest midget,
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So, where was I?
We're going. You're telling the Hey Baby story, and I'm waiting.
So, there was a guy in town called Major Bill Smith. He was a retired Air Force major. Well, he wasn't a major when they during World War II. He burned his hands somehow. So when they let him out of the Army, they let him out as a major.
Okay.
Up this. So Major Bill, as he was called in town. And he was a big old red-faced guy, looked like he was going to pop any minute. And everything was just, everything was, it's a smash hit, He was always upbeat about the dumbest shit. But anyway, he would call me because I don't remember the first time I recorded for him. I made records with him, but I had a regional hit back a long time ago. And Major Bill would call me when he had a new artist. And he would record anything, it seems. He would call me to get guys together for these sessions, and he would pay us $5 a piece. That's what I made for playing on Hey Baby, $5. He brought Bruce to Major Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Said, I got a guy here that I think, yada, yada, yada. Well, Major Bill got me to get some guys together. So I got bass player and a guitar player and a drummer. And the guy that brought Bruce to Major Bill played the piano. And the guy got in to play guitar and drums. Well, we were all young, and there's, at that point in time, there wasn't really any place to play except beer joints. So, it wasn't the cream of the crop, the players, what I'm saying? So we went in down there and cut, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs on Bruce, and Bruce and I hit it off immediately.
Yeah.
And he sit there and Bruce is one of those artists that it doesn't need, all he needs is a guitar and him, and he's the show because he sings so good and he accompanied himself so good. Well, we came to Hey Baby, and Bruce just starts playing it, and I asked him what key. He told me. I picked up the right harp, and while he was singing it, I just started playing what came naturally.
Hmm.
And we got these two or three things cut, and we were all really jacked up over Hey Baby. And Major Bill wanted to put a single out the other side of Hey Baby, a song called Dream Girl. And we told him, Major, that's not the hit. And the thing that convinced him of that was there was he was kind of like a bargain basement Tom Parker. Elvis's Tom Parker. That was his name, wasn't it? Colonel Tom Parker, yeah. So, he was recording anybody and everybody he could get because he wanted to be Tom Parker.
Right.
Anyway, we told him, says, that's not the hit. The hit's a Hey Baby. Well, there was a guy in Houston, I can't remember his, Shuey Mo, doing the same kind of thing in Houston that Major Bill was doing in Fort Worth, recording this one and that one and the other one. And they would talk back and forth with each other, Major Bill and Huey Mo. And Bill played the stuff he recorded on us. And Huey Mo came back and says, I'll give you $500 for half of that song, Hey Baby. Well, that made the Major realize he had a hit because his nemesis wanted it.
Okay.
So it was the A side, and we all know what happened. It was a massive hit, still a big hit today.
I'll tell you what. Let me tell you a crazy story, Delbert. And I realized this last night after a glass of wine. Some things were firing in my head. So I went to Oktoberfest in Munich many years ago. Yeah. In every single beer hall, they play that song all the time.
I do. The soccer teams, it's their theme song. They invited Bruce over to Germany several years ago to perform it at a game. And he's singing it, and there's millions of people singing it with him. But he was there singing it. He didn't ask me to go with him, but that's okay. I probably didn't want to anyway.
I bet, that if you played the harmonica and just one note or two notes, a whole couple generations of people would know what that is.
It's the signature of the song.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, okay,
well, that's why I got to go to England with Bruce when he went.
Yeah, so let's go on that plane ride. Let's go to England. Take us to England.
Back in that time, everybody in the world wasn't in a band. That was a new thing to have a band. Everybody that did these big rock and roll shows did it with the same band, And Bruce had been going out on the road to do that, and horn players were playing the harmonica part. It just doesn't work. It's not the thing. So he told the agent, he said, well, Delbert's got to go with me. So I got to go to England with him. And the Beatles were the opening act on a couple of shows we did. And when I got over there, well, I'll tell you something funny. When we landed in London, Bruce wasn't with us. He was coming in the next day, and I was with Major Bill. We got to London and landed and got in a cab and went to our hotel. And as soon as we got to the hotel, I realized I'd left my whole bag of harps in that taxi. The only reason I was there, I left it in the taxi. So I'm freaking out, and somebody overheard that and says, well, there's a Horner manufacturing company here in London. So bam, get in the cab, and I go to Horner manufacturing there in London and buy everything I need and come back to the hotel, and the guy at the desk says, hey, cab driver stopped by and said, you left these in the cab, so I'm harp heavy now. I got them out ass. Anyway, we were over there for, I don't know, nearly a month or maybe a month. We first two first 2 weeks we did. What's the name? I can't even remember the name of the big theaters like the old Fox and stuff. You real ornate and yada yada yada, just over the top. They had hired a band to back Bruce, and so the day of the first show was in Maid's Head, a short drive out of London, and we went out there early in the day for to rehearse with this band. And they were a pretty good little band, but nothing special. But, Bruce was the show, and all you had to do was just kind of stay with him and everything's good. So we got there to rehearse, and there were two girls at the back door to this place already out there. And they saw us. It was just me and Bruce and this people who were taking us around,
Sure.
right? These girls went apeshit and over Bruce being there, and so we did a rehearsal and we hung out there the rest of the day, and we did the show that night. That night when we got through, they had this show had about 10 different acts, and we all traveled in a bus, and the show would start like at 5 in the afternoon and go till God knows how late. And there were all these different acts on the show. And then I would go out and sing a couple of songs and play a little bit of harmonica and then introduce Bruce.
Cool.
And stay out there with him. And he'd come out. And that was the first time I'd ever seen Rock and Roll Madness.
For Bruce.
And it was madness.
We're not even talking about the
thrilling.
Beatles at this point. We're still talking about Bruce, right?
Oh, yeah. We're talking about Bruce.
They were
right
going
now.
crazy for him.
Well, he was a big deal. He had a #1 song.
Yeah.
There for God knows how long, and yada, yada, yada. And anyway, after the show was over, we all got on the bus. There must have been 15 or 16, 17 people, different artists and their trios or whatever. Anyway, the bus was filled up the bus, and they would take us back to our hotel. Well, we came out, and there were thousands, looked like, people out there wanting to get a little bit of Bruce. And we got on that bus, and it was slowly moving through the crowd. And I get all these people hearing, and I heard this one girl hollering, hey, remember me, remember me. And I looked down there, and it was those two girls that were there to be first of the night, and they were holding up their arms like this, and they had taken a razor blade and cut Bruce's name in their arm. Look. And I thought, God.
That's a breakthrough moment for you, right? This is a breakthrough moment.
Oh, hell yeah. But another breakthrough moment, I think I probably saved Bruce's life. After we ended that show, they had a barrier down in front of the stage that you could reach over, but you'd have to climb over it to get on stage. Anyway, people are just right up against it, right? And so I stayed out there with Bruce, and he's up there, and he does the show, and he finishes, and he turns around and puts his guitar on the stand, and everybody's reaching for him, right? Well, he goes out to shake somebody's hand, and they grab him. And then they started grabbing him. I reached out and grabbed his pants and his belt and yanked him as hard as I could. God. And got him away from those people.
My God. Well,
and
when I reference the breakthrough moment, no inside jokes here in this group, but you told me, you can use whatever language you want, that women like a man with a guitar case, whether there's a guitar inside of it or not. So when you saw that written here,
that's not exactly how it is. If you carry around a guitar case, it attracts women. If you have a guitar in the case and can actually play a little something, But the bottom line is, if you just carry a guitar case around into some place, you could have a woman before she knows she's been had.
This is
By
breaking
that I
news.
mean you don't have to be able to play. All you got to do is look the part. It's all about the image of it,
Man, you look the
and it's
part.
true,
You looked
huh?
the part. I was looking at some pictures of you. I mean, you still got it. But back then, man, you looked the part.
Well, I felt the part. Uh, it was. I'd never been out. The furthest I'd been out of Texas was to Oklahoma,
Not very
and
far.
and here I am in England, doing big shows. So that was an amazing event.
Take us backstage real quickly. Did you or did you not? Let's figure this out together. Did you or did you not teach John Lennon how to play the harmonica?
Well, I showed him some things, but I had a night off one night after we'd met, and we had a night off, and John asked me if I wanted to go out on the town in London with him and a couple of his buddies, which of course I said sure. But you also got to remember, this was before they changed the world.
Okay.
At this point in time, we were all going to change the world. They hadn't yet done that, so we were all on common ground. There were no hero worship going on. I'd never heard of the Beatles until we got over there. They hadn't broke in the U.S. yet. They hadn't had a release in the U.S. yet. So, but they were the number one group in England.
So Delbert, you're
and
oh,
not
sorry.
only in England, but they had really gained most of their fame at that time in Germany. That's where they got the leather coats and stuff. That's where they started doing that, because Germany's known for leather coats, I suppose. But they started doing that from their influences of playing in Germany. Oh, that's the way I heard it.
Yeah.
That's the way it was relayed to me, and that's what it looked like. So I've got no reason to question.
Well, yeah, I mean, what? You're certainly the only person I know in the world who's ever hung out with John Lennon a night on the town. So can you enlighten me as to what the hell that's like?
Well, I'll tell you what, it enlightened. This was another broke. We went out and we went in these clubs, and I didn't drink at all. We went in these clubs that were like beatnik clubs of the early 50s. Dark beanbag chairs, people going at it right there, and it was eye opening, It sure wasn't that way in Fort Worth, Texas. So it was a real revelation to, and the greatest thing that I remember was that, like in New York, all these little kiosks on the corner would be buy paper and a candy bar and yada, yada, yada. They were all over the place in London. And people walking up and down the streets with guitars on their back. They were taking rock and roll a lot more serious at that time than they were in the U.S.
So,
in many ways,
okay.
The fact that people were walking the streets with gig bags on, you don't see anything similar to that in the U.S. or any of the innovations that they were making. They were full steam ahead. This was before the Rolling Stone magazine. So we were all flying by the seat of our pants on everything we did.
So
Everything.
one of the things that started to happen was that the U.S. started to take rock and roll seriously, and so what that means, I believe, for Delbert McClinton, is that career's going like this, little hockey stick, right? We're starting to move. And
No. That didn't.
I got excited.
Uh, we talking about starting to move because of the thing in England.
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah. I
you're
mean,
saying?
we're taking off.
Well, for me, it didn't. I came back. I was just the accompaniment, but the important accompaniment. But I don't feel like anybody remembered my name when we left there because there
Hmm.
was very little. I don't know. I don't know. That's my assumption. Bruce was the star. The harp part was the signature of the song. So that's what we were. Came back from there, and it didn't do anything to change my position at home and what me and my band are doing because it happened in England
Hmm.
and they weren't out in the U.S. yet. So I came back pumped, but I was married, had a kid, had a job, living the life of the regular guy. I had to. Uh, I didn't graduate high school. I like 12th grade graduating, but I've never fucking missed it. But it was traumatic at the time. My mother wrote a letter and mailed it to our house. I wish I had it because she said she couldn't get me to sit still long enough to talk to me. So she wrote me this 4 or 5 page letter. My mother was a letter writer.
Hmm.
She's all the time writing to her 5 sisters, and she wrote long letters, and she wrote to how worried she was about me because I was so eat up with music and could see nothing else and couldn't pass my grade, couldn't have passing grades in school.
Hmm.
So I was stuck right back there with a shitty job, a child, and in Fort Worth, Texas, which was not the the home of the blues or the home of anything else. I mean, music. It was country. All the beer joints on the highway had country bands uh, until we came along. There were some other guys breaking the mold too, but you could only hear them after hours at the goddamn. And I can't remember the names of these places. There was a beer joint out on the Jacksboro Highway, which is where all the nightlife took place. Most of it.
I mean,
One beer joint after another.
Delbert, forgive me for we talked about this a little bit in regards to my father. You know, you guys you put some miles on those wheels, so you've met a lot of people. You've been to a lot of beer joints. You can't be expected to remember all those folks. It's all good.
Well, no, I don't. But it'd be nice if I could remember the main players' names. But
Well,
anyway, and in the band also was a great guitar player. Ended up his biggest gig was playing with the group Stuff. You remember Stuff? Instrumental jazz type group in the late '60s,
I'll look them up.
early '70s maybe.
I'll look them up.
Anyway, two people that became very famous played in that band at the White Sand Supper Clubs, and me and my band would go out there, and we'd be the only white people in there, sitting right there at the edge of the stage. The club owner let us in because we'd played his beer joint. We played all the beer joints when we were underage. They'd say you can't drink, you got to stay over here when you take a break, which all kind of went out the window when
Right.
it all started. But that's how loose things were.
Things were loose, okay,
Uh,
and so we're kind of moving along here in your career, and I'm not going to gloss over the fact, of course, that you've won 4 Grammys. You had 4 #1 albums on the blues chart. All this is amazing stuff. But truly, this show is more about breaking and not necessarily about music. So that's why I'm focused more on the breaking. So you've got this amazing music career, but
well, I've got a career. You're talking about then or now?
Then and now.
Well, then it wasn't famous. There wasn't anything famous about it. Just a bunch of guys, young guys, making music, and from 16 to 20, I went through I don't know how many different players, and most of them couldn't play, and I could only sing as good as they could play. So, but they just weren't available.
Thanks for listening. Next time on How I Broke That.
It's clear Delbert broke for the better in his rise to fame. Up next, we'll conclude our interview by learning about some of the tougher moments in the music star's life, as well as how he overcame and let the breakage change his life and career for the better.